This is Philippines Armed Forces, military power, by military weapons. 52 million.
Hello everyone and thanks for watching. This is Military Weapons, and today we're going to talk about the Philippine Armed Forces. The Armed Forces of the Philippines are the military...
I was gonna say, I don't, it's interesting because I was gonna say I don't know about my country's military either. Like, I don't actually know what the number of military people we have. So, yeah.
Forces of the Philippines, consisting of three main service branches, being the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. The President of the Philippines is also the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and forms military policy with the Department of National Defense, an executive department acting as the principal organ by which military policy is carried out, while the Chief of Staff is the overall commander and the highest-ranking officer in the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The Philippine Coast Guard also serves as an attached service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in wartime. Military service is entirely voluntary. When it comes to the Philippine Army, it is the main, oldest, and largest branch of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, also responsible for ground warfare. Its main headquarters is located at Fort Andre Bonifacio, Metro Manila. The Philippine Army is headed up by the Chief of the Army, attaining the rank of Lieutenant General, and he is assisted by the Deputy Chief of the Army and the Chief of Army Staff, in charge of organizational and administrative matters, both holding the ranks of Major General. The Philippine Army consists of 11 infantry divisions, with 1 armor division, 1 combined arms brigade, 1 artillery regiment, 5 engineering brigades, 1 aviation regiment, and 7 combat support units, which are spread throughout the Philippine archipelago. When it comes to manpower, this army features a manpower of 52 million available personnel, with 305,000 total military personnel available.
Why is it 52 million though? It's crazy. Like he said, it was voluntary. Like, I would believe 52 million if it was conscription, but how do you have 52 million available military personnel with voluntary engagement?
And 125,000 active personnel, along with 180,000 reserve personnel. On land, they have 7...
Or is it just literally counting like the number of like able-bodied people that can join? It's not actually people who are in the military? Because if there's only 100,000 active, yeah. It's probably, that 52 million number is probably like the number of able-bodied people who can join. That's probably what it is.
Tanks, 513 armored vehicles, and 286 towed artillery. The Philippine Navy is the naval warfare service branch of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and has an estimated strength of 25,000 active service personnel, which includes the 9,500-strong Philippine Marine Corps. It operates 115 ships and 25 aircraft, sharing the responsibility of patrolling the maritime borders with the Philippine Coast Guard, a formerly attached unit which became a separate maritime law enforcement agency in 1998. The Philippine Navy is administered through the Department of National Defense, and under the Armed Forces of the Philippines structure, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a 4-star general and admiral, is the most senior military officer. The senior naval officer is the chief of the Navy, who usually holds the rank of vice admiral. He, along with his or her Air Force and Army counterparts, are junior only to the chairman. The chief of the Navy is solely responsible for the administration and operation status of the Navy, and his counterpart in the U.S. Navy is the Chief of Naval Operations. Currently, the naval establishment is actually composed of 2 type commands, the Philippine Fleet and the Philippine Marine Corps. It's further organized into 7 naval operational commands, 5 naval support commands, and...
Perfect storm of being in the Pacific Ring of fire filled with volcanoes, typhoon belt, and the south is as close to the equator as you can get. That is
naval support units.
unfortunate.
Considering the vastness of the territorial waters that the Navy has to protect and defend,
Yeah, that's great.
optimal deployment of the naval resources are attached through identification of suitable locations where the presence of these units are capable of delivering responsive services. This naval force contains a total asset bulk of 103, which includes 2 frigates, 1 corvette, and 76 coastal patrol crafts. The Philippine Air Force is the aerial warfare service branch of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, which was initially formed as part of the Philippine Army. The Philippine Air Force is responsible for both defending the Philippine airspace and conducts close air support combat air controls, tactical operations, and other aerial operations throughout the Philippines. The Philippine Air Force has an estimated strength of over 16,000 personnel, operating 216 aircraft. The Philippine Air Force is commanded by the Chief of the Air Force and is assisted by the Vice Chief of the Philippine Air Force and the Chief of Air Staff, in charge of organizational and administrative matters, both holders of the rank of Major General. The Philippine Air Force consists of 3 tactical commands, 3 support commands, and 7 air wings. When it comes to its air power, it features an aircraft bulk of 216, including 19 attack aircraft, 23 fixed-wing transport aircrafts, 8 special mission aircrafts, and 97 helicopters.
I don't know if this is good. I don't know if
in 1981, when Marcos trusted military officer General Fabian Ver became the Philippine Air Force Chief of Staff, favoritism was believed to be attached to the military organization due to the fact that the general only placed his favorites in most sensitive positions and did not dismay qualified officers. Marcos would like to make sure who is fit for the job. Ver and Marcos also extended the tour of duty of those military officers who should have been effectively retired, to the dismay also of younger officers. Consequently, discontent in the armed forces of the Philippines would
I got to know... wait. Too fast. I got to know about the Philippine military as recently they bought supersonic BrahMos missile from India, which was developed through joint venture between India and Russia. Interesting. Designed to be flown blue side up, but if a war were to break out, then the flag would be flown right up. That's a cool concept. That's a cool concept. I like that. Typhoons in Russia as well. Damn.
Also at that time, the armed forces of the Philippines would wage a military campaign against the secessionist Moro National Liberation Front on the island of Mindanao, and New People's Army units under the Communist Party of the Philippines nationwide, growing to a 200,000 strong force. Then, in 1986, a faction of the armed forces of the Philippines, headed by then Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile, and Armed Forces of the Philippines Vice Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Fidel V. Ramos, took a stand against Marcos, ushering in the bloodless people power revolution that removed Marcos from power, installing Corazon Aquino as new president of the Philippines. During Aquino's term, most of the military units would remain loyal to her, as she dealt with various coup attempts against her by other military factions that remained loyal to the former dictator and those military officers who would help her to assume power. Then, in 1989, one of the bloodiest coup attempts ever against her would be crushed with the help of the United States. The armed forces of the Philippines, during her term, would also launch a massive campaign against the CPP-NPA after a brief hiatus, and also against the MNLF in the South. In 1991, the major services of the armed forces of the Philippines would be reduced from 4 to 3 when the Philippine Constabulary and Armed Forces of the Philippine Major Service, tasked to enforce the law and curb criminality, would formally merge with the country's integrated national police. The National Police Force on the cities and municipalities of the country, attached to the Philippine Constabulary, to become the Philippine National Police, thus removing it from the Armed Forces of the Philippines' control, and it would then be civilianized by a law that would be passed by Congress, therefore coming under the Department of the Interior and local government as a result. In 2000, then-President Joseph Estrada would order the armed forces of the Philippines to launch an all-out war against the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, a breakaway group of the
I mean, obviously, no question that we don't know much about the Philippines outside of like the video we've been watching, right? I know very little, but man, like from what he's talking about right now, the last 40 years or 50 years, there's been a lot more conflict than I thought. Like obviously, again, it's from just ignorance, right? There's too many damn countries on Earth, and I don't know much about all of them. But in my head, Philippines was pretty chill. I never really heard about like war and inner conflict like that. So I guess I'm learning a bit. I'll have to dig a lot deeper, I guess, to know a lot more about it. But damn, 40, 50 years of madness, I guess. That's what it sounds like. A high-ranking official in that family was assassinated by the government, which was a factor in Marcos' exile to Hawaii. And the family's high statue. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front is horrifying from the acts. Organizing MILF in headline is kind of funny. Unfortunate name. The wars are centralized to the south. I see.
NLF that wanted to proclaim Mindanao as an independent state. Then in 2001, Estrada would be removed from power in the two-day EDSA Dos People Power Revolt, in which the AFP played a key role. The revolution installed then Vice President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo as president. Since 2001, the Armed Forces of the Philippines has been active in supporting the war on terror and has been attacking terrorist groups in Mindanao ever since. In 2012, the Philippine Air Force Chief of Staff said that there had been no increase in the number of soldiers over a long period, and that the military aimed to hire 30,000 troops over 3 years. In 2013, the Armed Forces of the Philippines would manage to stall the attacks of the Moro National Liberation Front in the Zamboanga City crisis, as they launched an attack to proclaim the independence of the Bangsamoro Republic. In 2016, the Philippine Air Force clashed with the Malta group on Budik in February, and then in November of 2016 as well. In 2017, the Armed Forces of the Philippines also clashed with
I've never heard of all this recent conflict, I guess.
ISIS militants in Marawi, calling President Duterte to declare martial law under Proclamation number 216. Thank you for watching today's video. What do you think about the Armed Forces of the Philippines? Share your comments below. Also be sure to subscribe.
What the fuck is that?
Forces of the Philippines. Share your comments.
That's the craziest looking machete I've ever seen. It's curved like an anime blade. That's crazy.
Below. Also be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications to get more great videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Second part of the video was pretty interesting. First part definitely lost me a little bit with like talking about the ranks and stuff like that. Like I don't really felt like I really got much from that. But second part definitely make me realize and gave me an interest in like learning a lot more about, I guess, recent history of the Philippines. Because I feel like the only thing I really heard was the stuff with the war on drugs, I guess. So yeah, I kind of feel like there's a lot to learn. Who knows? Maybe I could watch stuff on stream or on my own. You never know, right? There's a lot of military checkpoint between cities here to manage the movement. One of your friends was from a city that got decimated in a month-long war on terror. Man, I have never heard of any of that. I had no idea things were that bad. Genuinely, like, in my head, I would have thought Philippines is a fairly, like, peaceful country, outside of, again, you know, the hit squad against the drug distributors and all that. Well, I stand corrected. I stand very corrected. Very interesting, and yeah, damn. I had no idea. Here's a link. Very interesting video. I will have to learn more, that's for sure. A lot more. Visayas, Central Philippines, is like the objectively best place to be since there's a lot of good places to be in. No foreign drama and no tourist. Fair enough. Yeah. It's really one of these things, like another thing, and I'm not boasting anything when I say I feel lucky to live in France, right? But yeah, in France, especially in the last 10 to 15 years with all the terrorist stuff, people often say, man, it's so fucked up. It's scary sometimes to go into any gathering and stuff like that. What has this country become? But if you really think and you look at it from like the scale of other countries, we're really not doing that bad tourism-wise. Like, it happens, it's fucked up, and people always make it like it should be made a big deal, but they make it more of a big deal than it actually is in the sense of when you look at other country, right? I mean, like here it's like you expect something might happen once in a while, but I personally don't really walk around scared or anything, but I can't imagine living in a country where yeah, like there's whole groups or to the point of almost like army group that are terrorists like. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. I guess it just makes me again like realize things are way worse in different places. On the upside, we have in Mindanao is we avoid all the typhoons. Really? All right. I mean, fair enough is all I can say. Fair enough. Damn, okay. I feel like my brain is adjusting my like understanding of the Philippines. I got a lot to learn, that's for sure.